I think it sounds interesting and exciting, and also I feel like it fits the name of a creepy little girl extremely well. I think creepy music, where the camera kind of stays on a scene for quite a long time and then maybe something happens in that scene that's unexpected. I'd say, considering it's a horror film, possibly late teenagers, early 20s are probably your best market. Probably you obviously need a shot of all the group together, because obviously horror films don't start out that scary to begin with. And I'd say obviously the picture of the little girl is quite a prominent part, so I'd expect to see that in there as well. Perhaps we shouldn't see all of her, maybe like a quick flash or an outline or a shadow, just something that suggests that she's there. By kind of scary music, and also maybe if you kind of lead the audience to a false idea that something's going to happen, but then perhaps it doesn't, but it does when they're not expecting it. I'd say possibly creepy children's toy music, maybe like a wind-up toy or a jewellery box, something like that would be quite sinister. You know, if it's a gory horror film, possibly kind of weapons or blood or something like that. But also, you know, the conventions where maybe you see footsteps by a bedside, or possibly, you know, somebody's face in a mirror when they're looking at it. So kind of hints of suspense. Okay, the ending could possibly be more of a cliffhanger where the audience has an idea of what they think has happened, but it's not actually made clear.
Which font do you like?
Well, I've looked at all three fonts, and I think all of them convey connotations of the horror genre, so they're all successful. But what I would suggest is maybe thinking about your subgenre, and from what I can tell from your narrative, it seems like it's going to be more of a supernatural kind of haunting horror as opposed to a kind of bloodthirsty slasher movie. So I've kind of numbered them 1, 2 and 3. The first one I looked at is this one, and I know you guys have suggested that perhaps we actually see the name Freya carved into maybe like a Wendy house or a shed at the bottom of a garden, which is a really interesting idea. So that could be one that you choose, and I think that works quite well. I would suggest thinking just a little bit about what colour you show this in, because at the moment it's, you know, black on a white background, and obviously with the mise-en-scène of your posters and things like your trailer, you're probably going to use in black as your background, or dark colours as your background, and maybe a lighter coloured font. So I really like that idea. Perhaps you could maybe make it look a little bit more like it's been scratched in rather than painted, because it's kind of got a little bit of a splash effect there, which might get kind of confused with blood. Okay. The second one I think is slightly less effective, although it's quite similar to the first one. I think the sharp edges on this first one would suggest more of a kind of this being maybe someone being trapped in that Wendy house or in the shed or whatever it's been, and it kind of suggests their frantic kind of scrapings on the wall, whereas this one's a bit squarer and kind of looks a bit more cartoony to me. But I would say the same thing about the background colours and things like that. But yeah, that one slightly less effective. And before I move on to the third one, because that one's not quite, hasn't got that kind of scratched effect, something that you guys suggested and we've talked about is perhaps having maybe a child's font. So it looks like child's handwriting etched onto the back of this door in the narrative, and that would be quite an interesting idea to take forwards. So maybe having a look at some fonts on the internet, but also have a look at The Shining, because there's a scene in The Shining where red rum is written on the back of a door as well in I think it's either blood or red paint or something. Okay, and the third font, perhaps I should have done this the other way around, because I think the first one's probably the most effective still. The reason that I'm not sure about this one is mainly because of the blood dripping from the word Freya. I'm just not sure how much in your narrative you've got this kind of bloodthirsty, kind of gory horror in your narrative. I'm not sure that's kind of clear at the moment. So I was thinking maybe if you took away the blood and you had this kind of classic font, which is kind of similar to what we have here in the others and in the Pan's Labyrinth example, and then you might start to borrow some of the conventions of other typographies for different horror films. So if you look here, it's got a very hazy effect around it, which kind of connotes suggestions of supernatural happenings, you know, the kind of hazy feel of a ghost and that spirit that's there. Does it again on the Pan's Labyrinth one, and on a more modern version, Paranormal Activity, you've got this kind of more of a technological feel because the cameras that are placed in the houses, but it's still got this kind of faded effect on the text, which is something you might look into. Perhaps not going for quite as a modern font in that sense. I like the idea of the scratch bit. Linking into that idea of not really liking the blood dripping from this one. Some other horror kind of subgenres that are kind of represented in a similar way. Although there's no blood on there, you've kind of got this worn effect of this kind of biohazard feel with the logo 28 Days Later. I think that's something definitely to avoid with your subgenre of horror, because I don't think that would represent it very well with a very big, bold, chunky font. Okay, similar with the Psycho one, because the connotations of a slasher movie with the kind of famous knife scene, with the knife kind of almost look like it's been scraped through the typography. Probably something to avoid of yours. Again, big, bold letter in there, probably not appropriate. And then the final one I looked at kind of borrows from the conventions of a bloodthirsty horror and a kind of supernatural one with this kind of classic font, which is similar to the Freya one here, but again has these kind of blood splashes which probably aren't too representative of your narrative. And I think you've got to bear that in mind when it comes to your narrative, what actually happens in your film, what type of subgenre it is, and where you want to go with that.
I think we should show Freya.
In terms of physical appearance on the screen in your shots, I think you're quite limited with the budget you've got and the technology you have at hand, and also with that, the time that you've got. So you're not going to be able to spend, you know, days on end using CGI and things like that. So what I think you should do is have Freya, cast her as perhaps a young girl, which kind of indicates when she was. When this happened to her, yeah, as a long lost sibling sort of thing, and because you've got a lack of technology and special effects, what I would suggest you do is actually have her normal on the screen, okay, as a physical entity on the screen. However, for the people who can and can't see her, you may have tricks using the camera, so you know, maybe have some strings on the door as it closes, that sort of thing, where you see events happening on the screen but it doesn't seem like anybody's doing it. It seems like a supernatural being is doing it, and perhaps she's shown maybe on her own or only when the main character can see her sister. Okay.
Yeah, I think it sounds really good because it's like a little girl's name, so it sounds really eerie and like creepy. I wouldn't expect to see like knives and blood and gory, but more like paranormal things. I would expect to see like toys and sounds coming from the toys, and then it seems like it would be based around Woman in Black and Insidious as well.
Because the film features a group of teenage girls, like young adults, I think it would relate more to people our age, young adults, 18 plus. I imagine, like, props wise, one of the opening scenes would be like the party. So you'd have like wine glasses and alcohol that in like the future, in the aftermath of the film,
It'd be like smashed.
exactly, they could be smashed over the floor. That picture of the lead
little
girl
girl.
and the little girl, I imagine like a shot of the. It's kind of influenced by Woman in Black when he looks at the picture and the eyes have been scratched or something. I just imagine that in the picture. But the doll is like it's like plastic and it's burnt on one side
like
of the
melted.
face, like melt. I can just imagine that, and her dragging it round as she's walking.
Just be like what girls would wear today.
Well, the
It's a
girl,
modern
the
film.
girls,
Yeah.
the group of girls. Oh yeah, they'd just wear, and you could just use the costume to represent the different characters that they are.
Yeah.
So like one could be like, you know, like how like we know people that are quite, they imagine themselves quite psychic. So one person could be like hippie-like almost, and they kind of connect to this like this problem in the house.
I would imagine like the girl being in a white nightgown that's probably burnt because the grandparents' house was burnt down.
If they show her in the
Yeah.
film.
You could play a lot of it that she's drunk and she thinks she's seeing things, so actually you never actually
Yeah, that's a good idea.
fully
So
appreciate
she
if
doesn't
it is a
understand
haunting
how-
or if it's just the fact that she might be seeing things.
Yeah.
And that might be a good twist.
And when like in Woman in Black where Daniel Radcliffe looks out the window, she can look out of the window and she can see like her sister like swing on the swing or like the swing and
Yeah.
moving like, and it's sunny outside.
Mm.
So
Because that's quite like creepy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Things to do with children.
We asked our target audience what we thought of, what they thought of our film trailer, and we found out some good research.
I think that it was good that everyone agreed Freya was the best name for our film.
Yeah, because it gives like them an insight to what the film's going to be about. And
Like
the little girl.
Yeah. About the music, I thought the music was good.
Yeah, they gave us a good idea with the children's toy.
Yeah.
Like the sounds.
Yeah, and maybe like a piano for behind.
Typical horror. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was good how we asked people that we going to base our target audience on, so everybody was 17 plus. Yeah.
And we know what our target audience thinks should be shown in the film now.
I think it was good what Sir gave us the advice on the text. It gave us another sub-genre of the paranormal, not so much the killings and
Yeah.
that sort of
Yeah, so we can relate our film to them.